Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and today we are going to do one final Double Game Week 23 video focusing on Arsenal and Man City players. We're going to look at their best players, we're going to look at their worst players that you guys should be avoiding, and we're going to have a look at some interesting differentials as well as comparing different players from different positions that you guys might be interested in. We're going to finish off this video by actually ranking all of the Arsenal and Man City players in the priority order of who you should transfer them in, as well as doing some predicted points and stuff like that. So loads to come in this video for the Double Game Week players. Hopefully you're going to enjoy it. Please do leave a like if you do. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. And before we go any further, just a quick word from our sponsor today. If you're looking for a recommendation in web safety and anonymity this game week, then how about today's video sponsor, Surfshark, a VPN service that keeps your identity safe online. It's basically like installing Kepper to your PC or mobile phone, but not only this, Surfshark allows you to browse the internet as if you are in a different country. If you don't have access to certain football channels and networks in your country, no problem, set your location to somewhere else using Surfshark and you can now access it. Maybe you want to watch Match of the Day or Sky Go from vacation and it's not working, or you're getting that annoying "this content is unavailable in your country" message. Just because you're playing away doesn't mean your internet needs to be. But here's my favorite part. If you've watched all of the best series on Netflix and want to unlock all the content on USA Netflix, for example, you can easily do so. You can switch up your country faster than you can switch Martinelli out of your FPL team. Protect your identity, be safe online, and access web content from around the world wherever you are, and you can now get 83% off and 3 months extra for free. Just use promo code FPLMate, all one word, to get this offer, or you can simply click on the link in my description. It really helps support the channel and you get a great service for a heavily discounted price. And if you somehow don't like it, there's also a 30-day money back guarantee, so everybody wins. Alright guys, so let's start off with Arsenal. So here are your top picks from the Arsenal team. No surprise to see these 4 names in here. You guys will probably know that I've spoken about these 4 players a lot this week because they're just the best picks. They are the best picks from Arsenal, and I feel like these 4 players are your priorities. These are the players you really want to be bringing into your team right now using your transfers. So I've got Saka up here. I would say that him and Ødegaard are probably the top 2 players to be picking up from Arsenal at the moment. Saka on penalties really does help, and he's got some really good numbers as well. You can actually see that Saka's numbers are actually better than Ødegaard. You can probably see that the expected goals, but in particular, Saka is getting a lot more in that kind of regard. Ødegaard is taking a lot of shots on, but some slightly lower value positions. It's still pretty decent though, and he is much cheaper. I still do feel like Saka is edging it for me as the player I prefer out of the 2. Although I would really like to have both of them, if at all possible. I do slightly prefer Saka. Now, Nketiah is an interesting one. I've seen a lot of people actually get a little bit worried about Nketiah because obviously Gabriel Jesus is back training, but this is a big injury for Gabriel Jesus. Yes, he is back on grass, but it's going to take a little while before Gabriel Jesus is actually going to be available. So if we're looking at Double Game Week 23, Double Game Week 25, Gabriel Jesus is not going to be ready by then. It's going to be some point mid to late March, it kind of seems like. It's going to be some point in March, which does take us to sort of game week 26, 27. I think at maybe that point, we might start seeing Jesus being kind of edged back into the team a little bit. But certainly over the 2 double game weeks that we got coming up, Nketiah is still a very safe pick. And given the fact that he has got the highest predicted points of any Arsenal player right now, you can see that on screen. He's got the best attacking numbers of any Arsenal player right now. He may have not actually technically got the most points since the World Cup, but his numbers really are looking phenomenal at the moment. So he really is a player you should still strongly consider, as is Gabriel there as well, the #1 defensive pick. And his attacking numbers are so good for a defender. They really are. You can kind of see, you know, he is taking kind of a shot per game, and he is generating a little bit of XG. Look, you're not going to get loads of XG from defenders typically, particularly centre-backs, but when we're talking about the set pieces for Arsenal, Gabriel is the player that the set piece takers are aiming for when we need a guy who is big, tall, strong to get those headed goals in, maybe a flick on or a knock on or something like that. He is definitely the one. And we also know that Arsenal, very strong defence at the moment as well. I do personally prefer the triple up in attack of Saka, Ødegaard and Nketiah, but Gabriel definitely has his merits, and I definitely don't want to write him out, write him off. If you are not happy to remove any of your midfielders or forwards in order to get some of these players in, and you feel like there is maybe a defender in your team, maybe you've got a Luke Shaw that you're happy to part ways with, or, you know, a Cancelo that you still have for whatever reason, Gabriel could be a really nice way of getting in that third Arsenal player and still getting that player who is super nailed on, good numbers, decent price as well. Looks good. These are your top picks. Couple of risky ones from Arsenal that I think there is kind of discussion to be had about. Not super keen on any of these players really, but you know, you definitely could go there, and I feel like if you already have any of these players, there is an argument for you to say, okay, I think I'm going to keep these players. So first of all, let's talk about Martinelli. I know there's been a lot of worry about Martinelli recently. His numbers are still good, and those of you guys who think he's going to be dropped from the Arsenal team, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. If he puts in a couple of bad performances, maybe Trossard comes in, but we haven't really seen bad performances, really. Maybe one bad performance from Martinelli since the World Cup break. He hasn't been playing badly, he just hasn't been scoring FPL points, and we often get in this kind of hyper focus around FPL points and start thinking, well, Mikel Arteta, maybe he's going to try and play the players who score the most FPL points. It's just not how it works, really, is it? So Martinelli, he's still going to be heavily favoured. I think he'll be a really good matchup against Man City, so can't see him getting dropped in that game. Don't see him getting dropped in this Brentford game either. He's going to be starting games. Now, obviously, there is a concern. Maybe he comes off at 60 minutes, maybe he comes off at 70 minutes and doesn't play the full game, and I can definitely see that happening. So I will accept that Martinelli is a slightly more of a minutes risk than he has been before. He's not a rotation risk so much, but maybe a little bit of slightly less minutes going on there. So look, I do understand why people want to remove him, but you can see on screen, guys, his numbers are still pretty good. His predicted points are still pretty good. He's not that far behind the likes of Ødegaard and Saka, to be fair. He really isn't. His numbers are not that much worse. So I don't know if I actually would be taking a lot of hits to remove Martinelli for the likes of Ødegaard. I would maybe take a hit to do Martinelli to Saka, maybe, but, you know, they are quite close. They really are. So just wanted to say, those of you guys who still own Martinelli, I don't think you need to panic about this transfer. If you have the luxury of a free transfer and you're able to upgrade Martinelli to a Saka or an Ødegaard, I would say, yes, definitely that is an upgrade on your player. So that's a fine transfer to make. But it's not an essential transfer. You know, we don't have to restructure our entire teams just to remove Martinelli or anything like that. So don't panic too much, guys. Still a decent pick. May not be 100% optimal. And obviously you would prefer to have 3 of the players you saw on the previous slide. But Martinelli is not as bad as a lot of people are making him out to be. He really isn't. So I feel there's opportunity to be optimistic. There you go, guys. A couple other plays on here. We'll do Ben White first. So Ben White, obviously slight minutes risk. Hasn't been playing amazingly recently, and when Tomiyasu has come in, he's actually played quite well. So there is kind of concern among some people that maybe Tomiyasu eats into White's minutes, same as Trossard eating into Martinelli's minutes a little bit there. I think White is at slight more rotation risk than Martinelli, if I'm totally honest, but we're still talking very, very small amount of rotation risk. So if you really don't have the money for whatever reason, or you already have Ben White in your team, would not be worrying too much. I still think he's an absolutely fine, absolutely valid pick. He's not the optimal player. He's not the perfect player to own, but hey, it's pretty close. Finally, Zinchenko. You could go for a risk on Zinchenko, but I feel like people going for Zinchenko, they're kind of hoping that he's going to provide a little bit more attacking impetus than a Gabriel, but he isn't really. I know we think of Zinchenko as a creative kind of defender. The numbers would suggest that is not the case, really. So, yeah, you're not really going to get anything extra from Zinchenko. You maybe do okay for bonus points because he's making a lot of, you know, passes during the game, but he's not going to be creating too many key chances for his teammates. And I wouldn't really be expecting too many points above the standard 6 points, assuming that Arsenal are keeping a clean sheet. So I'm not seeing too much appeal in Zinchenko. Do still prefer Gabriel. Spend that little tiny bit extra money to get him in. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that one. Finally, the avoids. Quick one on Saliba. So, yeah, pretty obvious by now. We've been saying this all season. Gabriel is cheaper than Saliba. You know, he gets the same amount of points for a clean sheet, and he has a better attacking threat. Gabriel has a much better attacking threat than Saliba from what we've kind of seen over the course of this season, really. So, therefore, Saliba, I think we're happy to say, if you're going to pick between Gabriel and Saliba, you're going to pick Gabriel every time. If you already have Saliba, fine. I would keep him personally. I would keep him. He does quite well for bonus points, so you could always do something there potentially if it's if you were talking about low scoring games with clean sheets, potentially. So look, he's kind of like a don't buy, don't sell kind of player, Saliba. Ramsdale, another don't buy, don't sell, but you know, I wouldn't bring him in. I think he's a bit of a waste of an Arsenal slot when we're talking about, you know, 2 double game weeks in 3 game weeks. We really want to go for those players with the really high potential there of scoring those real big mega scores, and that's going to be the likes of Saka, well, maybe Gabriel, and Kessia, certainly Odegaard as well in there. So those kind of players are going to be, you know, getting the big scores, really. Ramsdale, not so much. Onto Xhaka and Trossard. I probably don't need to tell too many of you guys this one, but considering these players are actually being transferred in by quite a lot of people this week, maybe I do need to say it, but they are straight up avoids. A complete waste of an Arsenal slot. Trossard isn't even going to start games. Xhaka, yes, he will start games, but look, he's not getting anywhere near the kind of attacking potential as some of your other guys. So even though he is cheap for a reason. Like we kind of say this week, you know, we want to be trying to maximize the amount of points we can get from our Arsenal players, and that involves picking the best Arsenal players. So whilst there may be kind of scope to keep the likes of Martinelli, potentially, maybe keep the likes of Ben White, you can kind of choose whether to transfer those out or not. When it comes to Xhaka and Trossard, you know, you just transfer them out and get in a better Arsenal player because there is a lot of points on the line here. Right, Man City, as far as I'm concerned, there's only 3 top picks from this team. Erling Haaland, I don't need to spend too much time on this one. Best player in the whole of FPL, best player in the league, potentially. Probably most of you guys will probably say at this point. Highest predicted points for game week 23 as well with 13.1. Definitely a captain option and definitely a triple captain option. If you still got your triple captain, I would really strongly consider using that triple captain this week. If you're waiting for future weeks, then make sure that you're not planning on using other chips in future double game weeks. That's all I'd say. If you have already used all your other chips already, then maybe you could save your triple captain. If you're planning to use those other chips on future double game weeks, then maybe you need to get that triple captain out of the way now. So there we go. That's the triple captain talk done for the week. That was very quick. De Bruyne and Mahrez, 2 players, very different profiles. De Bruyne, very much the creator. Mahrez, very much the goal scorer. Goals scored get you more points as a midfielder, but that doesn't help too much if your minutes are slightly more restricted. So De Bruyne, I'm expecting to play both of these games. I think he is going to be still very nailed on. I know that sounds ironic saying that after he's just been benched, but there's a difference between a benching and a resting, and De Bruyne is now rested. I think he will go through and start and play the majority of most games going forward. Very low rotation risk. Man City really do need to kind of do something in the Premier League right now, unless they've just given up on it and want to focus on the Champions League. I'll leave that one to you. That's a discussion for you guys to have, I guess. But yeah, certainly De Bruyne nailed on for minutes and has been underperforming. So yes, he hasn't scored too well recently, but we are expecting him to score a little bit better. Has a good history of playing against Arsenal as well. Does well against the big teams typically. So that's a point in his favour as well. He is a little bit more expensive than Mahrez, to say the least, but you do get a nailed-on player who is usually typically pretty consistent with his returns, even if you might not get the mega return very often. And even though he is a kind of a low XG player, he does come out with these crazy goals where he does score from very low XG chances. So he only needs to hit one of those right, and you know, everything looks very different. Mahrez, risky, really risky. And if there's one thing we know about Mahrez, is when we enter Champions League season, if you like, when Champions League games come back, Mahrez suddenly becomes a huge minutes risk, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see coming up. In general, Mahrez is just a little bit of a minutes risk. We are expecting Foden to come back as well, you know, as he recovers from his various little issues that he's had recently. But yeah, Mahrez, slight minutes risk. Can I see him starting both games in the double? Potentially, can I see him playing over 60 minutes in both of these games? Probably not, to be honest. If we're talking about game week 24 and 25, where you are going to need cover in 25, you're going to need all 11 of your players in 25. That's going to be deep into UCL territory, and I don't know if Mahrez is going to be a reliable long-term option, but what he is a high-risk, high-reward short-term option that you will have to acknowledge if you go for Mahrez, that this is going to be a problem at some point that you are going to have to deal with at some point. When you transfer Mahrez, he is not a forever pick. Definitely not when Champions League comes back. It's just not going to happen that way. And we know the situation with Pep Guardiola. We are going to get these rotations, and Mahrez is going to be primed for that. So, Mahrez, high risk, high reward pick, better attacking numbers than De Bruyne. If he gets similar minutes, you think that Mahrez will outscore De Bruyne. So it's kind of up to you. If you're feeling risky, you're feeling frisky, you want to go for the big hitter, then hey, go for Mahrez. But you have been warned. It is risky, and it is going to be an unreliable pick long term. All right, speaking of risky ones, let's have a look at like the actual kind of more risky optional picks, I guess. So yeah, first of all, Grealish, wanted to give a quick shout out to him. I actually think he's a pretty decent shout. I say pretty decent. He's obviously not anywhere near top tier picks, but I don't think he should be completely ignored, and I feel like there is a little bit of potential. He has been playing very well recently. I think he would be probably more nailed on than some of the other midfielders, just because of the way City are setting up and playing at the moment. He could do pretty well, and his numbers aren't terrible, only 6.8 million, and I think he's okay. Look, I think there are worse picks in the world. I'm not going to advocate for him too much. Definitely prefer De Bruyne, definitely prefer Mahrez as well. That's very easy for me to say, but hey, let's give a little shout out to Grealish in this video anyway. In terms of these defenders, I'm going to have to sit on the fence here. So yeah, we've got 3 on screen. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I mean, I already disappointed my entire family by becoming a fantasy Premier League YouTuber, but I'm going to disappoint you guys as well by not telling you which defender to go for, but I will give you the merits to each of these defenders. So first of all, Man City defenders do not score goals, do not get assists. So when we've lost Cancelo, he was the kind of the last bastion of attacking Man City defenders, and even that we haven't really seen this season. So don't go in there expecting attacking returns from your Man City defender. Yes, it could happen, but if it does happen, it's because you got lucky, not because you picked right. So just be aware of that. It could happen to anyone. It really could. All of their attacking numbers are pretty much, you know, in the mud. Maybe a little bit of creativity from Ake and Lewis, but not enough for it to really count for anything, really. So yeah, don't expect that. In terms of each of their merits, so Ake, we would say, is the best left centre-back at Man City right now, but we also do have Laporte that could technically play there as well. If Laporte is maybe playing in the centre, then Ake is the most natural out on the left-hand side there of the centre-backs. So yeah, potential for Ake to be playing most games in left centre-back / left back. Lewis could also play left back technically, and Laporte could also play left centre back. Now the good thing about Ake is that he has been in very good form. Pep Guardiola has spoken very highly of him, and it does look like he is certainly first choice. That doesn't mean he's rotation proof. It just means that he would be a priority play for Pep Guardiola in each game. So that's a good thing there. Akanji, a good thing is that John Stones is injured, and we've also seen some other injuries to other players, but the bad thing about Akanji is there are some other players that are kind of ready to pounce. Like Akanji, yes, he's been playing fine, but he hasn't been like really putting a marker down like Ake has, and you feel like Akanji is perhaps one bad performance before he gets kind of dropped or rotated for Diaz, and then you have got a long-term problem in there. But for now, whilst he is consistently playing, and if he doesn't put in a bad performance or anything like that, and Diaz isn't given an opportunity to come in and play, then you would say, and John Stones remains injured, then you would say that Akanji is reasonably nailed on. So there's good things, definitely good things to like about Akanji. Things can go wrong at any moment for him, though, and I think when things change for Akanji, they'll change very, very quickly, where I think Ake has a slightly better long-term future. Even if Ake is maybe at slightly more rotation risk now. Oh, it's so difficult to say, guys. Finally, Rico Lewis, probably a bit rotation risk. Super cheap, so does it really matter? Is he going to get enough minutes that warrants you buying him for a double game week? I mean, potentially. He's so cheap, and we're not so desperate to triple up on Man City players anyway at the moment that, hey, he could still be a pretty good pick. Playing pretty well, not going to get attacking returns necessarily. Sometimes he's going to play 45 minutes, as we've seen before. Very young, could he be protected occasionally? I don't know. Lewis is kind of so cheap that it doesn't really matter. Just what can you? There's nothing to lose. There really is nothing to lose. You can only gain from a player like this, and he does seem to be Pep's favourite at the moment. So there's some merits to Lewis. I know I sound like I'm saying the answer is Lewis, and maybe I am. You can interpret it however you want. So look, I'm sitting on the fence here. I appreciate that. Maybe whatever I've said have made you feel like I'm leaning towards a certain player. Whatever your interpretation is, let me know in the comments, and yeah, go with that player, I guess. Let's do some avoids for Man City. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this one, to be honest. Alvarez, serious minutes risk. I think De Bruyne is going to be playing the next, like, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games probably. And Alvarez doesn't really play at the same time as De Bruyne. In fact, that's not quite correct. It's more a case of De Bruyne, Haaland and Alvarez never play in the same team together. So it's going to be De Bruyne and Haaland, and it's going to be Alvarez on the bench. Getting the odd 1-pointer. Can't see him starting very often. Certainly not enough to make it worthwhile. And with the likes of, you know, Haaland, Kane, Nketiah, these kind of players in the forward slots, is there really space for Alvarez right now? I don't think so. So yeah, not worth the risk. Just not going to happen. Bernardo, pretty poor attacking numbers, to be honest. So look, these attacking numbers are so low that even if he gets all of the minutes in the world, which he won't, it's still not going to matter because his numbers are just poor. Diaz, we don't know when he's going to return to the Man City team, if he will. A lot of people are bringing him in. Don't really understand why. He hasn't even played, well, I think he's played 1 minute since the World Cup in the Premier League for Man City. So no idea why people are bringing him in, but just don't, not yet. Kyle Walker, similar situation. Not played too many minutes since the World Cup, really. Clearly not a favourite player right now in the current setup that Man City are going for. So yeah, not worth the risk. Definitely would put the likes of Diaz, Walker, Laporte, whoever else, whatever other defenders there are in Man City, firmly below the likes of Ake, Akanji and Lewis. Those are your top 3. Everyone else is just, you know, wouldn't even consider it. If you're looking for someone a little bit cheaper than the likes of Ake or Akanji, don't go slightly down and go for Walker. Go all the way down to Lewis. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that one. So yeah, these are your avoids. Edison, we didn't mention. Maybe he's worth a quick shout. If you want to go for Edison, you can. I'm kind of like on the fence about him, if I'm honest. I'm not really that bothered either way. 6-point merchant is only good if the team is getting clean sheets, and I think there's no guarantee of that. Yeah, I would definitely say with Man City that your priorities are not in the defensive areas, and I think we will conclude the video by having a look at that exact kind of concept. Who is the priority? So here we have it. I've got for you the top 8 players, or transfers, I guess, for you to bring in for the Double Game Week 23. Obviously, we've got Erling Haaland at number 1. I imagine that we can pretty much ignore him because most of you guys are going to have him already. I bet 99% of you. But just in case you are as crazy as I was at the beginning of this FPL season and you still managed to maintain that craziness until now, buy Erling Haaland. What are you waiting for? I mean, come on. Like, it's 2023. We should know by now that this guy is a monster machine, a machine monster. Saka, I would say, is the second priority transfer. So if you haven't got Saka in your team, I would say that he's the second priority after Haaland. We've got Ødegaard here as well. If you can't get to Saka for whatever reason, go for Ødegaard, but having both would be nice. Nketiah next, and then Gabriel. So definitely after Erling Haaland, I would say that it is definitely a case of Arsenal players being the priority, and that is mostly in part to the fact that they have 2 double game weeks, and all of their players are like, well, all of these players anyway, are super nailed on for all those double game week fixtures. So you can't really lose with these Arsenal players. You get loads of fixtures, you get nailed on players, you get cheap players, and you get players who are consistently performing as well. So you can't lose with these Arsenal guys. Get 3 in, get the best 3 you possibly can in. If you are stuck with a Martinelli or Ben White, don't worry too much, but if you can do it for free, try and prioritise getting those Arsenal players in. After that, I think at that point, you start thinking about Man City players. Once you've got your Arsenal players sorted, then you start thinking about your Man City players. So one of De Bruyne and Mahrez, don't know if I would go for both necessarily, but I don't mind it. I do prefer the Man City attack to their defence at the moment. There is a higher upside, and, you know, before we would have nailed on Man City defenders, so it's kind of worth going for them. Now it's just, like, it's the same. Like, these defenders are just as rotation risk as the midfielders, so you may as well chase the upside with the midfielders. And then finally, Man City defenders, bottom priority, really. If you want to get one, you can. If you don't want to get one, there's really no pressure. And I feel like as long as you've got Erling Haaland and maybe one other Man City player, I don't think you need a triple up. I don't think if you can't get to De Bruyne, I don't think you need Mahrez. If you can't, you know, easily get to a Man City defender, I don't think you need to. I think 2 Man City players is absolutely fine, as long as one of them is Erling Haaland, of course. And then just take your pick after that, really. De Bruyne is still the second best Man City player, full stop. I don't think there'll be too many arguments with that. You get that nailed-on player who is, you know, has been consistently a fantastic player in the Premier League for years gone by. I think there's a lot of advantages there. You could take some risks elsewhere, but they would be risks. So look, I just don't want anyone to pressure themselves too much into getting triple Man City, unless you can do it easily, and unless you're happy with it, unless you're confident in it, and you feel pleased when you see that Man City player on your FPL field, pitch, page. I know from experience that sometimes the Man City players can cause more misery than joy, but sometimes they can cause joy as well. But I guess we'll see on that one. But there you go, guys. Those are my order of the transfer priority for you guys, I say. Right, we'll call it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this one. If you did enjoy this one, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Don't forget to check out Surfshark in the description. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the deadline stream. A few other videos on my channel for Game Week 23. Loads of videos, in fact, for Game Week 23. If you want a little bit more content before the deadline, want a little bit more info, a little bit more chat, go check them out. But yeah, aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching today. And I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.